Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a corner of homeownership where things can feel, well, kind of murky.
Mm-hmm.
You need your heating or cooling fixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly you're in this high-stakes situation. You're inviting someone into your home
Yeah.
to fix a really complex system you probably don't fully understand yourself.
It's fertile ground for tricky business, unfortunately. And that's exactly what our sources are zeroing in on here.
Right.
We've pulled together insights from, well, all over. Blog posts from HVAC companies themselves, news reports, even a really interesting Reddit discussion thread.
And they're all wrestling with the same problem, basically.
Pretty much how homeowners get tangled up in scams just trying to keep their homes, comfortable and safe.
So our mission today is to navigate this whole landscape for you, the listener. We're going to dissect those super common, like eye-poppingly low offers you see advertised everywhere.
Ah, yes, the infamous $49 tune-up special.
It's exactly that one. We'll expose how that bait and switch works, look at other common scams too, and most importantly, try to equip you with the practical know-how to spot the red flags.
Yeah, how to avoid falling victim.
And it's not just about, avoiding being ripped off financially, though that's huge.
Oh, absolutely. But it's more than that. It's about making sure your system is actually safe, that it's running efficiently.
And that you feel confident, right?
Yeah.
Informed when you're dealing with a professional.
Because that core vulnerability, like you said, it's that moment you have to trust a technician standing there in front of your furnace or AC, and you just need it fixed.
Okay, so let's jump right into that tactic. The one multiple sources flag as the most common way trouble starts.
The super low-cost service offer.
Yeah, usually starting with something like that $49 tune-up special. It sounds amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like getting your car checked for practically nothing.
It's absolutely designed to grab your attention. Sources like ProTech HVAC, Debias, Service Legends, Allison Air Conditioning, they all call this out.
And the strategy is, well, it's classic bait and switch.
Textbook. That low price, $49, maybe $59, sometimes even advertised as free, that's just the bait. The whole point is just getting a technician through your door.
And then comes the switch. Sources like Debias and Service Legends really break this down. That tech, they're not making a living doing $49 tune-ups.
No way. They're often working on commission.
Ah, there it is.
So their real goal, unfortunately, is to find problems. Sometimes minor things, sometimes, well, maybe not even real problems.
And then sell you expensive, often unnecessary repairs.
Yeah.
Or push for a whole new system way too early.
Exactly. And think about it logically, ProTech explains this pretty clearly. A real comprehensive HVAC tune-up. It takes time.
Right, it's not a 5-minute job.
No. It could easily be an hour, maybe more actually on site, plus travel time, fuel costs.
So that $49 fee.
It just doesn't pencil out. It barely covers the technician's skilled time, let alone the gas, the van, the company's insurance, all the overhead.
It's mathematically impossible if that's the only service they're providing.
Right. It's unsustainable as just a standalone service, so the incentive structure itself drives the behavior.
If your pay depends on selling the switch part, you're obviously going to be looking hard for things to sell.
ProTech directly points to that commission model as a key reason these lowball offers even exist.
And this is just completely different from what a genuine, valuable preventative maintenance tune-up should actually look like.
Night and day. Sources like Debias, Natural Choice, and a lot of the folks on that Reddit thread paint a very different picture than just a quick look-see.
Yeah, a thorough tune-up means really getting into the system's guts. We're talking detailed inspection of the big parts, the condenser outside, the evaporator coils inside.
The blower motor, the heat exchanger in a furnace, even checking the ductwork. Reddit users like AOComposer 3531 and Marslaves 48, they really emphasize this comprehensive visual check, along with companies like Debias.
And then there are the crucial diagnostic checks, testing electrical connections, checking components like capacitors.
Yes, capacitors are so important. One Reddit user made a great point they degrade over time. Catching a weak one before it fails on the hottest day of the year, that's valuable preventative maintenance.
That saves you an emergency call later.
Exactly. And refrigerant levels, too. Service Legends and Natural Choice hit this hard. HVAC systems are sealed. If the refrigerant is low, there has to be a leak. Period.
Just dumping more refrigerant in without finding and fixing the leak is, well, it's pointless and costly for you later on.
Totally. And Service Legends adds a good tip. Ask them to show you they're charging by weight. That's the proper professional way to add refrigerant.
Good point. And what about those scare tactics around older refrigerants like R22?
Yeah, be wary of that. Service Legends notes that, okay, R22 is phased out for new equipment, but it's not illegal to service older systems that use it.
So they might say, oh, you've got R22, you got to replace the whole system.
Right, which isn't necessarily true. Now, R22 is more expensive now, no doubt, but it doesn't automatically mean replacement.
Okay, so beyond the visual checks and basic diagnostics, what else does a real tune-up involve? Reddit seemed to have a lot on this.
Oh, yeah. Users like Composer3531, NitsuJ420, and others talked about safety and performance checks. For gas furnaces, that means checking gas pressure, inspecting the heat exchanger.
And if they say it's cracked,
Demand proof.
yeah,
Make them show you. And they need to check for carbon monoxide properly. That's critical.
absolutely. What else?
Combustion analysis for gas or oil systems, checking the flue pipes for proper venting.
Things most homeowners wouldn't even know to look for.
Exactly. Plus, taking amp draws on the motors, the inducer fan, the main blower, the compressor outside.
What does that tell you?
It's like a health check for those motors. If one is drawing too much electricity, too many amps, it could mean it's struggling and might fail soon.
Ah, so it's another way to catch problems early.
Precisely. And then there's cleaning key parts, the flame sensor, the burners, making sure the condensate drain line isn't clogged. That's all part of a proper service.
You know, that Reddit thread title was perfect. Are tune-ups, money grabs, or legit? It really captures the whole dilemma.
It does. And some commenters rightly pointed out that, hey, simple stuff like changing your air filter or rinsing off the outdoor unit coils, homeowners can often do that themselves.
Sure, basic DIY maintenance is great.
Absolutely. But, as many others on Reddit stress, those more complex checks, combustion analysis, proper electrical testing, using refrigerant gauges correctly, safely inspecting a heat exchanger that takes specific tools, training, safety knowledge.
Stuff most of us just don't have.
Right. So the value of a professional tune-up really boils down to what you're getting. Are you getting that comprehensive, skilled check? Or just a quick superficial visit designed to find something else to sell you?
That's the key distinction. One Reddit user called it the difference between a simple operational check and true preventative maintenance.
And that preventative maintenance, the real deal, does have value, especially if you can't or won't do the DIY stuff, or you want those safety checks done right. It can genuinely catch problems before they become middle-of-the-night emergencies.
But you've got to be sure you're paying for that service, not just paying $49 for a sales pitch.
Precisely. You're paying for the expertise and the thorough check, not just the opportunity for an upsell.
Okay, so that low-cost tune-up is a major gateway tactic.
Hmm.
But let's say they're inside now. What are the other common scams our sources warn about?
Well, probably the most damaging one is pushing unnecessary replacements or really big repairs.
Like saying the whole system is shot.
Yeah, Service Legends and Natural Choice both describe this. You get told the entire AC or furnace needs replacing when actually maybe just one smaller, cheaper part would fix it.
That sounds awful.
It is. Service Legends points out some big red flags, like recommending a full system replacement just because it's, say, 10 or 15 years old, or claiming multiple major parts all failed at the exact same time. That's pretty rare.
And that A.G. Shapiro lawsuit you mentioned earlier, it had examples of contractors pushing specific products that weren't needed.
Right. Yeah.
Especially targeting vulnerable people.
Exactly. High-pressure sales for systems people just didn't need. Then there's simply inflating the repair costs.
Overcharging.
Yep. Overcharging for parts, charging way too much for labor, or even billing you for parts they didn't actually replace. Natural Choice and Service Legends both say a huge warning sign is if they won't give you a clear, itemized price breakdown before they start the work.
You should know what you're paying for, line by line.
Absolutely. And that A.G. Shapiro case, it even mentioned contractors having people sign blank or incomplete invoices, then filling them in or changing them later. Just deeply dishonest stuff.
Wow. What else?
Shortcutting the inspection. Natural Choice talks about this. They might rush through the initial check or tune-up, maybe deliberately not pointing out a dirty filter or a simple electrical issue.
So they can discover a much bigger, more profitable problem instead.
You got it. Then there are fake discounts and rebates.
Offers that seem too good to be true.
Yeah, or outright fraudulent rebates. Natural Choice and the A.G. Shapiro suit mention deceptive advertising. The key advice here: always verify any rebate directly with the utility company or the equipment manufacturer. Don't just take the contractor's word for it.
Good tip. Don't get caught by third-party scams either.
Right. And then there's the cracked heat exchanger scam. This one's particularly nasty because a real cracked heat exchanger is a serious safety hazard, leaking carbon monoxide.
But scammers exploit that fear.
They do. Service legends and Reddit users talk about techs claiming a crack requires immediate, very expensive furnace replacement. The absolute rule here: demand proof.
Make them show you the crack.
Yes, and insists they test for carbon monoxide with properly calibrated equipment. A real crack is dangerous, yes, but they must prove it exists before you agree to a massive repair or replacement.
Okay, what about the size of the unit itself?
The oversized unit scam. Service legends and PV heating warn about this. It sounds weird, but with HVAC, bigger is not better.
Really? Why not?
An oversized system costs more up front, obviously, but it also cycles on and off too quickly. Doesn't run long enough to properly dehumidify the air, so your house can feel cool but clammy.
And that short cycling is bad for the equipment, too.
Very bad. It puts a ton of wear and tear on the compressor, the most expensive part. PV heating stresses that a good contractor must do a manual J-load calculation.
What's that?
It's a detailed calculation based on your home's size, windows, insulation, orientation, all sorts of factors to determine the exact right size system you need, not just a guess or a rule of thumb.
Okay, good to know. Any other red flags?
Asking for the full payment in cash up front before any work is done. Service Legend says that's a huge no-no. Reputable companies might take a deposit for big jobs, but full payment up front. Very suspicious.
And pressure tactics, that seems to come up a lot.
Constantly. Natural Choice, Allison Air Conditioning, the A.G. Shapiro suit, they all highlight this, creating this intense sense of urgency, maybe exaggerating safety risks.
Like your family is in danger if you don't fix this right now.
Exactly that kind of thing. Or just insisting you have to decide and let them start work immediately.
To stop you from getting a second opinion.
Precisely. It's classic high-pressure sales. The A.G. Shapiro case had awful details about these tactics being used against seniors or other vulnerable people, even threats if they tried to cancel.
That's terrible. And one more, misrepresenting financing.
Yeah, the Shapiro suit found cases where people thought they were signing up for a simple loan for the project,
But got tricked into high-interest credit cards instead.
with different terms, higher costs, things they never agreed to verbally, just layers of deception.
Okay, wow. It really does feel like a minefield out there.
It can seem that way. But the good news is the sources also offer really clear, practical steps you can take to protect yourself.
Yes. And if there's one piece of advice that just echoes across almost all the sources, Service Legends, ProTech, Natural Choice, it's this one thing.
Get a second opinion.
Always. If a diagnosis sounds fishy, or the estimate is shockingly high, or they're recommending a huge replacement,
Call another reputable company. Get their assessment. Get their quote. It's the single best defense.
then going back to where we started, be really suspicious of those free or super cheap $49 tune-up offers.
Absolutely. Service Legends, ProTech, Allison Air Conditioning, they're all clear. See those as potential bait. Assume upselling is the real goal.
And always, always insist on a written agreement and a detailed price breakdown before they touch anything.
Yes. Service Legends and Natural Choice hammer this home. You need to see exactly what they propose doing, why they say it's necessary, and the cost for each part and labor, line by line.
Natural Choice adds that a trustworthy tech should be willing to explain why each repair is needed in language you can actually understand.
Makes sense. And do your homework on the company beforehand. Check online reviews, Google, Yelp, whatever. Look at their website, maybe their social media.
Look for patterns, right?
Yeah.
Not just one bad review, but consistent complaints.
Exactly. Service Legends, ProTech, PV Heating, they all recommend this basic due diligence.
Ask for proof. If they say a part is broken, ask them to physically show it to you.
Right. Natural Choice and Service Legends suggest this. And that Reddit user, Marslaves48, mentioned their company actually makes a point of pulling out the damaged part for the homeowner to see.
Seeing is believing, definitely.
Look for companies that are properly licensed and insured. ProTech mentions this as basic professionalism.
And ask about their technicians' training. PV Heating brings this up. Do they have certifications like NATE or BPI?
What does that signal?
It shows the company invests in knowledge, that the techs understand complex systems, and maybe even how your whole house works together.
PV Heating also had an interesting point about asking if the techs are full-time employees or subcontractors.
Why does that matter?
Well, the thinking is full-time employees might have more stake in the company's long-term reputation and keeping customers happy.
Okay, and when getting quotes for a new system, definitely ask how they determine the size.
Yes. They should be using that manual J-load calculation we talked about. specific to your house, not just guessing based on square footage.
Get multiple estimates. ProTech and Natural Choice both stress this. Compare those quotes.
If one is wildly different from the others, either way too high or way too low, that could be a red flag.
And maybe the most important thing, don't let yourself be pressured.
Absolutely not. You're the customer. Take your time, especially with expensive decisions. Natural Choice and that A.G. Shapiro case show how pressure is a core tactic of scammers. Breathe, think, get those second opinions.
It really comes down to choosing a contractor who values transparency and trust. Sources like Heart Cells, which came up in our material, they build their whole reputation on things like decades of experience, engineering know-how.
And crucially, transparent upfront pricing. That's a big one.
Right. Instead of that $49 bait, companies like Divius or ProTech, they talk about their higher-priced tune-ups, like maybe $89 or $150, being the actual comprehensive service. There's clear value described.
And choosing companies like Heart Cells or others that explicitly state they use upfront pricing, where the tech gives you a detailed quote before starting any work that just bypasses so much of the bait-and-switch risk.
It changes the whole dynamic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you know the price before they start, not after they've spent an hour diagnosing on a cheap call.
Completely. It signals they're confident in their diagnosis and the value they provide, selling a real service, not just looking for an excuse to upsell once they're inside your home.
And, at the end of the day, remember that while, yeah, you can change your own filter, maybe rinse the outdoor unit.
The basic stuff.
Right. But those really critical safety checks, carbon monoxide, heat exchanger integrity, and the complex electrical or refrigerant work, that really does need professional skill and the right tools.
Knowing when you need a pro is important. But now, hopefully, you also know how to vet that pro much better, how to avoid those common traps.
We've definitely covered a lot, how those tempting low-cost tune-ups often function as sales tactics.
The range of scams, from unnecessary work and inflated costs to high-pressure tactics.
And crucially, a solid list of defenses you can use emphasizing transparency, getting those second opinions, doing your research.
Finding that reputable, transparent contractor isn't just about saving money. It's really essential for the safety and efficiency of your home's heating and cooling system. Your peace of mind, too.
So wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you listening right now? Given the potential risks to your comfort, your safety, your wallet, how will you approach your next interaction with an HVAC service provider?
Yeah, what's the one specific question you'll make sure to ask next time based on what we've dug into today?